Montana is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do want to thank Senator Carper and Senator Capito for managing this bill. Very much appreciate what you guys have done up to this point and what you're going to do over the next 3 or 4 days. Mr. President, I rise today for the same reason that several months ago I worked with 4 other Democrats and 5 Republicans to try to get something done to address the infrastructure of this country. Why? Because infrastructure is important. Let me take you back 60 years. It is 60 years ago, it was 13 and a half miles to the closest patch of pavement from my farm. Then I was about 4 or 5 years old. And I remember riding with my dad in a 1954 GMC 300 truck on that dirt road, hauling wheat to town, as he weaved around piles of gravel that were in the middle of that road. And I asked my father, why are those piles of gravel there? And he said, they're working to pave this road. And I said, what does that mean, being a 4-year-old? And he said, well, remember the stretch of road, the 150 or 200 yards that we drive on to get to the elevator, right before the elevator? And I said, yeah, this road's going to be all like that. And I thought, wow. And it was. It got paved for the first 8 miles out of town. And that was pretty neat. We were 5.5 miles from pavement then, which was a great improvement. And some 10 years later, a little more than 10 years later, that final 4 miles was graveled, or was paved so that we could access that highway. So why is that important? That's important because not only did it reduce our costs on the farm and things like tires and pins and bushings and ball joints, but it made our farm more profitable. Because of investments that my grandfather and my father's generation made, not only did it help them at the time, but it helps me to this day. That was my first introduction to infrastructure. And that is why, several months ago, I realized that after 15 years in this body, and people from both sides of the aisle talking about infrastructure, that it was well past time to get something done on infrastructure. Because I knew it was economically important, I knew it would create jobs, and I knew it would help sustain communities all across this country. So what's in this legislation? Why is this legislation so important? Well, let me tell you, it's about the economy. It's about creating jobs. It's about making sure that we can compete in this worldwide economy that we live in. How we can maintain our position as the world's premier economy in this world. So how does it do it? Well, it starts by repairing and modernizing our roads and bridges, our airports, our transit systems. That's critically important for an economy. In my particular case, I live a long ways away from our customer base. So when I jump in the truck and I go to town and I use that piece of pavement that was put down 50 years ago, that's important. When I cross that bridge that crosses the Marias River, when I haul grain to Fort Benton or Great Falls, without that bridge, I couldn't access my markets. Without those highways, I cannot access my markets. So it is critically important we keep our aging bridges and roads and airports up to snuff. And then this also makes an incredibly important investment in our aging water systems. Where I come from, they call it dryland agriculture. This year it's a little drier than we want because we're in the middle of a drought. But the truth is, even if you're looking for drinking water or irrigation water or any water, it's hard to come by. And as our Native American friends have told us many, many times, water is life. And so infrastructure to get water to the point where we can utilize it is critically important. This bill is a major investment in water infrastructure. And I would say one other thing. Whether you live in the West or whether you live in the East, our water systems in this country are wore out. because we haven't done what our parents and grandparents have done. We've allowed them to decay without investing in this infrastructure, which is what we're doing today with this package. And then we talk about broadband, which if we can get this bill across the line, I believe it will fix the broadband accessibility issues in this country. We came through the pandemic and we saw how important broadband was for distance learning, for telehealth, for opportunities for businesses to extend their customer base. This is going to expand, this bill will help expand high-speed internet throughout this country, both urban and rural. And I will tell you, there's a lot of work that needs to be done in my home state of Montana when it comes to broadband. And then there's the grid. If we're going to move forward with electric vehicles, and they are coming, then we have to have an electrical grid that will support those electric vehicles. And without improvements to our electrical grid, we will be behind the 8 ball all the time when it comes to, for example, the electric pickup that Ford is putting out. I will say in my lifetime, I will probably have an electric tractor on the farm because this technology is moving so quickly that it's real. And this package does much more than that. I just wanted to touch on those few things, but it's done without increasing your taxes, which is really important. Because right now, as we see our economy moving forward, we need to keep it going in that direction. Ultimately, as I said before, this bill comes down to the economy. It comes down to creating jobs and putting America to work. And it's about our national security. It allows us to be able to compete with China in a way that we're losing right now. And, you know, I've heard people come to the floor and say, you know, infrastructure is good, but we don't need it. We don't need it right now. Well, all I have to say, if you believe that, take the keys to the car out of your pocket, known as our economy, and give them to China. Because you're giving this economy away, and you're going to make China the leading economic power in this world. Then there's the issue of bipartisanship that's been talked about a lot today already. The truth is this bill has made some news because Democrats and Republicans actually worked together. They actually compromised. Nobody got everything they want, but everybody won. And as I've told many media outlets, this shouldn't be news, but in this day and age, it is. Hopefully this will set an example so that we can have much more bipartisan legislation going forward. And in that regard, I want to thank my colleagues for their dedication to this effort over the last several months. The G10, Senator Portman, Sinema, Collins, Warner, Romney, Manchin, Cassidy, Shaheen, Murkowski. All of you folks have sat with me in the same room and we've battled it out. Sometimes the conversation has been fun, sometimes it's not been so much fun. But the truth is every one of these folks wanted to get to yes. And in the end, we did get to yes. I want to thank Senator Schumer. I want to thank him for his patience, not something that he's known for. But he has been incredibly patient as this bill has been debated and changed and moved forward particularly over the last week. Although I will say that he pushed the envelope and made sure we were tending to business even before that, because I think Senator Schumer also wants to see this bill come to fruition. And I also need to thank the administration. The folks that represent President Biden in these negotiations, and I'm going to name names: Louisa Terrell, Brian Deese, Steve Ricchetti. These folks were incredible resources, and they were incredibly helpful, and this bill would not have happened without their input. I also want to thank all the staff members, both in the personal offices and the committees from both sides of the aisle, who gave up their weekends and worked late in the night over and over and over again I've said this before, I'll say it again, the staff does the work, the senators take the credit for it. The fact is our staffs really rolled up their sleeves and really performed in a way that every American would be proud. Look, over the next 3 or 4 days, we have the opportunity to prove that the United States Senate can do big things and still function. The process we've been through isn't been pretty. I don't think it's supposed to be pretty, but it's been worth the while. I would say the world is watching, both our allies and our adversaries. Our allies want us to succeed. Our adversaries want us to fail. I would say to everybody in this body on both sides of the aisle, and we did get a 67-vote majority to move forward with this bill, but let's show them that America can function again. Let's get this bill passed. Let's get it over to the House. Let's get it to the President's desk for his signature. With that, I yield, Mr. President.
Mr. President,